I'd like to take the opportunity on behalf of the Metro Human Relations Commission to welcome each of our panelists and our moderator for the morning. And we're going to enjoy it anyway as people drift in. On behalf of our director, Mr. Thomas Nickery is going to speak and introduce the moderator in a few minutes. But I'd like for each of the panelists to introduce themselves.
I'll start. Okay. Good morning, everyone. My name is Tiara Horton. I am a rising freshman at Howard University, and I'm currently a senior at Deansworth High School. And I'm so happy to be here today. Thank you.
Good morning. Brooke Davies from the Historic Fisk University, a senior chemistry major.
Hi, I'm Miles Curry. I'm actually a senior at Montgomery Bell Academy, and glad to be here.
Good morning. I'm Joshua Everett. I'm a junior at Vanderbilt University, and I'm a double major in public policy and communication studies.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to proceed, and we welcome each of you, and we're going to have a good discussion this morning as people drift in. Thank you.
Good morning. I think I should face this way.
Yeah.
I'm only kidding. It's such a pleasure to be here this morning, and I want to thank you for being here also, because there's never a discussion that's ever too small when we're talking about Martin Luther King and civil rights and what we're doing and what has been done. And I don't think there's ever a time that is as important as it is today when you consider what's happening and has happened in our community just over the last 5 years or so. So with that said, I want a special thank you to Neil Darby, who I have the pleasure of working with every day, who has a history in civil rights as long as my arm and longer, who was actually appointed by then Governor Clinton in the state of Arkansas, doing what he is doing here today with us there. So I think that's pretty cool. And my history, I'm Tom Negger. I'm the interim director of Human Relations for the city of Nashville. I was in the hotel business for 38 years. I formed an organization here called Nashville for All of Us that 5 years ago this Wednesday defeated the English Only Initiative, which I'm incredibly proud of, because I think of where we would have been and where we could have been and talk about a civil rights issue. So it's one of those things that are very, very exciting to me. But I have the incredible pleasure of welcoming and thanking John Manson, for being here. John I'm going to read this, and it's kind of interesting because I don't know what half of it means, so you'll have to help me out there. But good. John is the special master for the 8th Circuit Court of Davidson County, Tennessee. He also serves as the special probate master and is the special master appointed by all circuit judges to hear all circuit court matters regarding orders of protection. In addition to his role as special master, John also serves as the senior law clerk for the 8th Circuit Court and is a Rule 31 listed mediator. Outside of court, John is the adjunct professor at Bethel University, teaching in the Masters of Conflict Resolution program. John is the immediate past president of the Napier-Luby Bar Association, the local affiliate of the National Bar Association. In addition to his legal pursuits, John is an accomplished musician. Oh my God, you do it all. And occasionally performs at various venues around Nashville. He is currently the president of the Nashville Symphony Chorus. He received his BA in music performance from Morehouse College and his JD from Howard University Law School. His most important jobs is being a husband and being a father to his daughter, who is now a year old, Dorian. So with great pleasure, thank you for being here and thank you for moderating this. Thank you, John.
Thank you. All right, thank you, everybody. Welcome to this youth forum. As a Morehouse man, it's always fun for me to do things about Martin Luther King. There's nothing bigger than going to school every day and there's a big statue of him standing there, every day you go to class. So this is closer to my heart probably than most holidays, I guess. The special master and the music and all that, briefly. Domestic violence, orders of protection. So I do domestic violence. So I'm the judge that handles 50% of all domestic violence cases in this county, and then all of the probate. Just the simple probate, though, not anything complex goes to the judge. But I do the simpler things. So that's what that is. And then music is just what I love, and so that's the other stuff I do. So I'm a busy guy. I am a busy guy. My wife would tell you, stop being so busy, and what's wrong with you? So anyway, we have some wonderful students here. Tiara, I know very well. She got second place in the national competition, the MLK speech competition that the Napier Louis Bar Association has. So I know Tiara very well. The others I will meet. My father's a Fisk graduate, so good, yay Fisk. And both my parents went to Vandy for law school, so we got some connections. I got some connections with them. So we're gonna have a good time. I'm gonna really just moderate. I think that as you said, the conversation needs to be had. These are conversations that people I think are afraid of. People don't like talking about racism. They don't like talking about equality. They don't like talking about all those things. They just sort of want to gloss over it. It's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable to have these conversations, but that doesn't change the fact that it's still there, that it still exists, that people still need to be aware. Maybe, it's not 1962 when we're getting hosed down with fire hoses or dogs are being sicked on people, things of that nature, but there's still racism, there's still inequality for not just blacks, but for a whole bunch of groups of people, and the dream that Martin Luther King had has not yet been realized. So we still have a lot of work to do. So we're just going to go down the list. We have some wonderful questions that I think will take probably more than the 2 hours we have, but we're going to just do as much as we can, and I'll just start down the list and let you all sort of chime in. And Tiara, we'll start with you since you're right here. Tell us what MLK Day means to you.
All right.
It's a heavy question, I think.
Okay. So what does Martin Luther King Day mean to me? You asking me this. My response is going to be, Martin Luther King Day is not only about diversity and it's not only about equality. It's about us, it's about people, and it's about us having the same resources. It's about everyone's sharing the same chances, the same, we all get to travel different places, we all get to, go to the same schools. It's just about us sharing the same opportunities as people. And also, it's a day for us to remember his dream. He wanted equality for all mankind. He wanted the opportunity for all of us to be able to go into the same movie theater, share the same schools, have the same schooling. He wanted us to all just have a better life, and he wanted equality for all mankind. So what Martin Luther King Day means to me, it's just a day to remember a man who literally died for all of us to have the same equality. That's what it means to me.
All right, thanks. Brooke, what do you say?
First, I would like to thank the Metro Human Relations Commission for having me here today. Judge Manson, I'm a little disappointed that you decided not to come to Fisk.
I had to leave Nashville, I'm sorry.
No, understandable. The other day at Fisk University, we just had a convocation, and long story short, it's a ceremony that we use to pause and remember Martin Luther King. Not only was he a fantastic civil rights leader, he did graduate from an HBCU. He was very in touch with his local community. The day for me means not only remembrance, but a continuation of his dream. How awful would it be for us to decide that we've arrived with the rising of a new black president, with the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, with all of these advances in civil rights? How horrible would it be for us to decide that we've arrived, this is it? I think this holiday offers wonderful opportunities for things like these panel discussions. At Tennessee State University, students from all over the Nashville area are going to go for a National Day of Service. Next week, there will be a march citywide, so we can all come together and remember his dream. That will end again in a convocation at Tennessee State University. MLK Day means not only the end of an era, but the beginning of a new one. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Maya.
Also, I'd like to thank everyone for inviting me and being here. And just so you know, I'm actually taking notes on my phone. I'm not texting or anything like that.
Sure about that?
So MLK Day, to me, it is first and foremost to remember Martin Luther King Jr. That's first, but I think it kind of has a new meaning as we progress into time, because obviously we get farther and farther away from the civil rights era in the 60s, and as a young generation, we tend to kind of lose sight of what has happened, what people like MLK and the people around him have sacrificed for us to be here. So having said that, I feel like we as the younger generation should keep in mind that we need to continue to work hard in everything that we do and give everything our best. Furthermore, as we continue on into life and we get a little bit older and successful, I think that MLK Day serves as a reminder that it is not just about us. It's about everyone. It's, looking back to, the younger kids that will be in different schools and trying to get them to see how they can achieve, their dreams. And finally, I think that MLK Day kind of helps us see that it is about equality, period. It's not necessarily specific to the African American race in the United States. It's kind of a fight against injustice and unfairness around the world, and I think that we should also keep that in mind. So that's what MLK Day means to me.
Thank you. Thank you. Josh.
MLK Day is a time to reflect on our commitment to justice and equality, and to realize that there are several methods to achieving that equality, and at times that the things that we believe will achieve equality might not always have that result. I mean, Martin Luther King himself once said that I fear I may have integrated my people into a burning house. And so we also have to not sanitize the good Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. We have to realize that he was not only a civil rights leader, but he was also a radical labor activist. He was also an anti-war activist. He was also an anti-poverty activist, and towards the end of his life, he was planning a Poor People's March. And so we have to be able to connect the dots and see how different forms of discrimination are tied to one another. What we also have to realize is Dr. King as a man did not make the times. The times made Dr. King, and he adjusted his methods and his strategies to the time. In that same way, we have to be honest about the conditions that we're in and adjust the way we act on them to the times with the same principles of justice and equality. And so Martin Luther King Day really is a time for reflection that will result in action.
All right, very good, very good. Thanks, everybody. That's a good start, I think, to today's discussion. I want to go to the second question about how can we spread and build a quest for better diversity. It's interesting to me. You note in the news a lot of racial incidents happening with an older generation sort of affecting the younger generation. You've got Trayvon Martin, of course, being a good example of that. There's other examples of people maybe from a different era doing things that perhaps their younger generation didn't even expect to occur. So how can you spread and fulfill the quest for diversity? I think that left alone probably would just be simple, but you've got to deal with these people that are from a different time and that are bringing that inequality with them on to you, and sort of putting it on you. How do you deal with that, and how can you change that? I mean, I think is the better way to say that. And I'll let you start if you have any thoughts.
Okay. Thank you, Judge Manson. How can students spread and fulfill the quest for better diversity? I often feel that we put some cap on diversity. I've often heard students say in my recruitment ventures, well, I don't want to come to an HBCU because of X, Y, and Z. And diversity is one of those things they often mention. Often we think of diversity as race, or we think of it as class, when so much of diversity deals with our religion. It can deal with what state you're from versus what the color of your skin. Once we understand that diversity has a very different face than maybe it did 10 or 15 years ago, then we'll start to be able to better spread and fulfill this quest. For instance, I know as an African American woman that science is not popular, not with my generation, but with my race, with people of my social economic status. Me doing what I do every day, me being interested in science, going to the lab, taking an internship in something that's not popular, already speaks to diversity. It starts with one person. Encouraging somebody else to stick in there with the hard sciences, encouraging some other young person of whatever minority to decide, oh, I actually love math. Little things can build up to something great. Thank you.
That's good. Joshua, anything to add to that? I think your experience may be different. I don't know. So tell me about it.
Yeah,
talk about how it affects you personally too.
I'm at the opposite of a HBCU.
Yeah.
But I think we have to trouble that word diversity a little bit, because I once you get to the college age and on a college campus, you hear it a lot. But I'm not quite sure everybody is thinking about the same thing when they say diversity, as the young lady here pointed out. And I think of something Angela Davis said, what's the point in difference if it doesn't make a difference? The real diversity, to me, that we should be striving for is a diversity of perspectives. Because if you just get a bag of Skittles in the room, but no one understands, how other people feel or even respect other people's cultures, then you failed at trying to establish diversity. And so, if you really want to spread diversity, the first thing that you have to do is spread understanding of one another.
That's good. Miles, did you say a college you had chosen yet? I'm sorry, I didn't.
I was actually I applied to Harvard.
Okay.
Early decision, and I was deferred, which means neither accepted nor denied. So my decision was postponed until March 27th.
Right. Okay. Well, good. That's perfect. Then talk about. I think it's interesting because I went to a predominantly white high school. I went to university school. And then I went to HBCU. Talk about this diversity question, especially as it relates to private schools, to predominantly white private schools, when you're maybe one of a few. Obviously, there's maybe a few more at MBA than where USM, but talk about kind of that. What's that experience like?
Absolutely. I go to MBA Montgomery Bell Academy, and when I think about diversity, the question, says students, so I'll refer to the classroom environment and school environment first. At MBA, as you said, private school is predominantly white, and spreading diversity to me personally is kind of a combination of both of these 2 points. I certainly try to break barriers. Through I perform academically. I, have actually brought this service project that raised $35,000 in 7 weeks at MBA. I'm involved in the ambassadors program. I'm president of the Chinese Association, Student Association, and also service and that sort of thing. So my reason in doing that, one of my primary reasons, is trying to get people to see that, their perception of the status quo in terms of races and their talents are inaccurate. Not only that, but I'm also showing this to African Americans or Indians and everyone else. I'm saying that you are not confined by people's perception of you. And by doing that and being elevated as a result, I'm very well liked among the school, but I find it imperative that I don't kind of just sit back and soak into all that. I want to be involved, and I try to set the example of helping people and being involved in different things that I could have never have actually predicted that I was going to be involved in. So by doing that, I try to get people to see that oftentimes, in the human race, and we're all guilty of this, is that we tend to kind of fall into our comfort zones, our social groups, and never really expand beyond it. And I want people to see that their perspectives, just naturally our perspectives, tend to be based off of our own personal experiences and what we have done, where we live, how we live, and that sort of thing. So at MBA, I encourage a lot of students to actually travel. Fortunately, there are a lot of travel opportunities. I've been to China, South Africa, Dominican Republic, and on. And just seeing these different cultures, these different ways of being and acting was such a great experience for me because, I realized the world, doesn't necessarily revolve around me and how I think. So bringing in different perspectives and understanding different perspectives, and that everything isn't, what it is. We can expand and do different things, which I think that she touched on. I think it is imperative for us to encourage other people to pursue their passions, whether it's writing, whether it's science, math, any form of humanities, economics, whatnot. To pursue that and to never stop. Of course there are going to be challenges, but you're doing what you love to do, and you're not being simply confined into these social groups and sharing the same perspective as those around you. So that's kind of my perspective of diversity, especially at MBA.
Okay, thank you. And Tierra, this is sort of the similar experience that we had going to a predominantly school and then choosing an HBCU, and talk about the quest for diversity and then go to number 4 and sort of talk about do you need an education and how that sort of to me is connected. We'll go back to number 3 a little bit later, but why Howard versus, I don't know, anywhere else, UT, any of the predominantly white schools?
Right. Well, I first just want to thank you, Miles, because I feel as though Miles and we have a similar situation. I attend Innsworth, which is, again, another predominantly white school similar to MBA, and diversity there is very limited. I'm going to be completely honest with you. All the black people that go there, they play sports, The first time I came to the school, all I got was, oh, you must play basketball. Oh, you must do this. I'm like, no, I'm sorry, I swim. And, me saying I swim is like, black people swim? What? That's just the response that I got. But no, you guys are exactly right. I feel like diversity is all about perspective, and it's all about a mindset. And the way that we can really help this is just to lead by example. Each and every one of us up here, we're leading by example. You, for example, you're on the student government. I'm on the student government. I'm the only black female, to ever swim at my school. I have girls coming up to me every day, Tia, how do you do that? I want to do that. Does your hair get wet? I'm like, girl, you can do it, and you can be fabulous and the best at it. So the best way for us to really push this diversity, and especially in schools, it starts with us. We have to lead. And I don't know, I just get really emotional. This is just a beautiful thing because I just love this. But going back to Howard, actually I was looking into Vanderbilt, I was looking into the Harvards, the Georgetowns, but I really wanted a culture shock. I've been in Tennessee for all my life. I've been at Innsworth for all of my life, 13 years, and I love Tennessee. I love my school. But I think it's time for me to reach another place. I think it's time for me to expand my horizon culturally. I've been around the sweet, sweet Tennessee. Everyone's been so kind to me. My school just nurtures me. My mom, loves me, she's a mom. She's everything. But I really want to be independent, and I really want to use those values and those cores that my mother and others have instilled in me, just to be able to see if Tiara can really do it on her own. And I feel as though Howard is a school that is meant for me. Of course, it's another HBCU, and I'm just excited. I'm just excited for the thrill. I'm excited to see what God has in store for me, and I'm just ready to kind of just use everything that I've learned over the years and just to put it into play and see where it goes from there.
Okay.
So going on to number 4.
Yeah, well, let me interject. It's interesting conversation that she just had is sort of similar to what I went through, just deciding to go to Morehouse, deciding, you get good SAT scores or whatever, and then UT says, oh, come on, we'll let you in immediately, you'll pay for everything, or we'll, I applied to University of Chicago and Oberlin and all these schools, and you get in, everywhere because the education that you've gotten at the private school is a good education, but wanting something different, wanting to experience something that you hadn't experienced before was really what made me pick Morehouse. It's funny, but when I went to visit, it's a totally shocking thing to see 99% black people walking around, and there's no, you're not used to that. When you're used to 80, 90% white all the time, every day of your life, because I did 13 years at USN, so my entire life is that, and then go to Morehouse and there's nothing but black people. It's shocking, and in a good way. And HBCUs aren't for everybody. I think some people need to I think it's a very specific experience for a specific person. But for me, and probably for Tiara, it just sort of made you want to be a part of that. You're like, this is something I think I can be. And then, there's the nervous. I'll tell her there's nerves. You say, well, I haven't been around black people. They don't really know maybe I don't know how to do it. Maybe I'm going to be the weird kid. Everybody else went to private school too, so it's no big deal. We're all just trying to figure it out together. So you'll see that. But do you need an education? And I think this is interesting. This panel obviously is going to say yes, absolutely, right? Because they all are either almost done with college or college bound, and education is very important. So we're talking to those that may consider it not to be an important issue. So Tiara, talk about why are you even going to college? Why?
Do we need an education? Yes, we need an education to survive. Does the education have to be only academic? No. There's all different types of educations. There's street smarts, there's academics, there's mentor education, there's education through experience. And I think what education does, it teaches us how to survive on our own. But I come back to the question, do I need a college education? Yes. I feel as though, me personally, I definitely need a college education because I want to go to law school. Okay. I want to become a lawyer. I want to meet new people. I want to make connections. I want to expand my horizon. I want to expand my vocabulary. And I personally feel as though the only way I can do that is to get a college education and just to go on. So
okay.
Yes, I do think.
Okay, good. Brooke, answer that same question. Talk about, though, number 6 as well. Where do you come from? And then why did you decide to go to Fisk? And why do you think it was an important decision?
Can I tell you how loaded these two questions together are? Okay.
Absolutely. I did it on purpose. I
Okay.
thought that
Okay.
I did it on
Okay.
purpose. Go ahead.
You thought I could handle it? Okay, great. Fantastic.
Do it.
The smartest guy I ever knew never finished college. The smartest guy I have to say I ever knew was my father. This man thinks logically. He can think circles around people that are known to be intelligent. I have seen him have conversations with people, with folks the likes of Hazel O'Leary, and have a steady conversation. And you think, oh, this guy has to be a doctor of something. Yes.
Yeah.
My father is a tradesman. So the idea of education to me is a little bit different.
Good.
He taught us, I was home educated, me and all 5 of my siblings. My mother is an engineer by discipline. She gained her degree from Tennessee State University in electrical engineering. Again, uncommon for an African American woman.
Right.
But upon having my sister and I, she left the engineering world and became an educator. She became a homemaker. And when she made this decision, she and my dad decided that not only were their children going to have book smarts, but they were also going to be given a very round view of the world. So upon our graduation from high school, not only did we have all the credits, all the requirements needed to go wherever we wanted for our college experience, we also left with some real life skills. We were all put through a financial aid course. They taught us how money works, how to, just simple things, how to live on less than you make.
Right.
They taught us how to fix a toilet. He made sure we all knew how to change our tires, girls included, before we left for school. I do think an education is important. I'm not going to tell you I think college is the only way to go, because I have known plenty of tradesmen that have gone on to make fantastic money without a college degree, without an MBA. You also asked about my decision to go to Fisk.
Right.
This is my favorite story. This is my recruitment story. So when I was a senior in high school, I came out with a 3.82 GPA, and I had an ACT score of 28. And I applied to RPI, I applied to Hollins, got into Howard, Vanderbilt, all these fantastic schools. And my dad says to me, hey, have you considered Fisk? And I said, well, no, because I don't want to stay here for school. You know, if I have to stay here for school, God forbid, I will be at Vanderbilt or Lipscomb. You know, I just don't want to do it, Dad. No thanks. And he said, okay, just apply. You're a third generation Fisk guy. Your grandfather went there. You had an aunt that went there. Just try it. Fine, Dad, whatever. I apply, and a few days later they tell me I'm accepted and that I have a chance to compete for a full ride scholarship. Now, I had already been to Howard, and they had offered me a full ride as well. I went there, and I just wasn't ready for what I saw. DC Hood is so different from the Nashville urban scene. I wasn't ready. So I visited Fisk, and who was the first person I meet? I met the Honorable Hazel R. O'Leary, the first African American and the first female Secretary of Energy. And she was everything I could have dreamed of. I had read about her. If you had had Beyonce there, I wouldn't have cared. But I was, wow, this is her. She's got my job. I was so excited. That entire weekend, I was wrapped up with love and attention. I had the opportunity to sing with the world-renowned Fisk Jubilee singers. My youth choir was invited to sing with them. I had the opportunity to meet professors in my field. The guy that won all 4 of the R&D 100 awards at Fisk University. And also, if I can put this out here, Fisk is the only HBCU with any, and we have 4. I got a chance to meet this guy. These were the opportunities afforded to me at Fisk, and I left that weekend and I realized that there was nowhere else I could graduate from. And I've been there ever since.
Good, thank you. And Joshua, I want to go to you now and sort of get your background and how you got to Vanderbilt. I think it's the other side of the coin, I guess, from what their stories might be. So why did you? Tell us where you're from, where you came from, and then how you got to Vanderbilt.
Well, I'm originally from a very small township called Goodwater, Alabama. And that's the name of it. When I was in about 8th grade, we moved to Leeds, Alabama, which is right outside of Birmingham, which is a major urban area in Alabama. When it came around to my decision for college, I'll first say that I'm a very different person now than I was then. And the most important thing at that time, I come from a single parent household, so the most important thing was which school would offer the most financial security.
Sure.
And I applied to a few schools. I applied to Auburn in Alabama. I applied to Clark, Atlanta. I applied to Notre Dame and Chapel Hill as well. And I knew I didn't want to stay in Alabama, but I mean, if you go there, you'll understand. But you know, when it got down. Originally, I wanted to go to Chapel Hill because I had different career aspirations than I have now, but I was never able to visit there, and I did get the chance to visit Vanderbilt University, and more so than the school, just the area of Nashville was what really attracted me. I can't say that Vanderbilt just inspired me and I was just inspired to come by something. They really just offered the best financial situation, and so that was the decision we made to go ahead and matriculate to Vanderbilt University. Now, sitting here today, if I was faced with the same decision, I can't say that I would make the same one. Because since being at Vanderbilt, and we can get to the education part of it now.
Absolutely.
Getting to Vanderbilt, I started receiving a different kind of education, and that was an education of self. And when I say an education of self, I mean a deeper education of my own heritage, not only of the domestic history of African American people, but also where we come from. And so I think that education is important, especially self-education, so you can have an idea and a concept of who you are and where you come from, because a scholar I look up to, Dr. John Henry Clark, once said that when you think your history started in chains, anything looks like progress. And so I think it's important to realize that, you know, this is where we are now, but this is not where we began. And so we need to have knowledge of where we come from so we can have a better understanding of where we are today. To speak more to the young lady's point about people who have an education but didn't go to school, I think it's important to know that you can learn from pretty much anyone. Like you, the most intelligent man that I know did not go to college. He was my barber. And every time I go back home and get a haircut, you know, I know I'm in for an academic discussion. You know, and this is a man who just went to the library when he was younger and read. And, you know, but because of circumstances that a lot of people from my area face with the environment, he was not able to complete college. But, you know, I would take his side in any debate, really, because he takes the initiative to educate himself. I also do a lot of community organizing kind of work, and so what I get from people who do that, many of whom did not even attend college or haven't even considered it, the kind of education I get from them is much different from what I can get in a classroom setting. And so I think it's important to realize that, number one, you have to educate yourself. And number two, you have to realize that anyone is capable of being a teacher.
Good, thank you. And Miles, yours is going to be different still. So let's hear about sort of. Oh, I'm sorry. Did somebody have a question? Yes. Sorry, Mr. Darby.
I was born in Silicon.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to stay in Alabama either.
Yeah. I actually went to church in Silicon.
So good. So Miles, yours is going to be different still, obviously, with Montgomery Bell not being a 13-year sort of situation. So you went there from somewhere else, and now you've chosen Harvard. Hopefully, talk about sort of how you got to where you are, and why education is important to you.
Okay, first I just want to say that unfortunately I do have to leave right after this because I've got an interview with colleges.
Good reason. That's a good reason.
I also want to point out something that Joshua said. My dad is actually from Alabama. He was born in Troy. So, I go down there quite frequently, and I know exactly what you're talking about. And also, as Brooke and Joshua said, an education does not make you smarter. It doesn't. What makes you smarter is simply your own initiative. I've met plenty of students who, go to MBA, and just because they're at MBA, it doesn't make them smart. They have to take their own personal initiative to learn and educate themselves through the resources provided from MBA or any college, high school or college that you go to. So it doesn't surprise me one bit that the smartest people that they've learned in fact did not go to college. I would like to start with that. Second, having said that, an education, if as long as you take advantage of the resources provided, can help us find our passions, our academic passions. When we're young, we're still trying to figure out, what we're good at or what we really enjoy and find out, what exactly we want to pursue. So I feel like an education kind of gives us a stage that throws the math, the sciences, the English, histories, and whatnot at us. And we, digest the information and learn, and ultimately we start to discover what we like. But it goes beyond what we like, as Joshua said. It helps us discover who we are. What kind of person we are, what stuff we like, whether we are just, really focus intensely on academics or like to take a balanced approach and do academics and athletics and, some service and extracurricular activities as well. And I think that's a beautiful thing. When you are able to certainly find out what you like and who you are, it kind of gives you a security. A personal security, which in turn allows you to look back to, other people and try to help them see that they can achieve the same things, which ultimately produces different diversity and things like that, as we talked about. And in education, and more specifically, a college education, I feel like opens our eyes to different perspectives. There are different people out there. Different races, different religions, different socioeconomic backgrounds. And, we see that the world is full of all these different things. So our way of doing things isn't necessarily, quote unquote, the right thing to do. That there are different ways of going about things, and they may be better than how we think about things. So it gives us a stage to learn from other people, both academically through teachers, but also through our peers and understanding them and their takes on different pieces of material. In terms of a high school education, that sort of, I feel like, gives us the basic skills that we need along with finding what academic interests we're interested in. So, we learn to read a complex piece of literature and digest it and understand what point this person is trying to make. We understand how to manage our time, how to work efficiently, and et cetera. And finally, I feel like it prepares us for the world. For me, if once I graduate, if I was just kind of dumped into the real world and had to get a job and all that, I would not be ready, for sure. So I feel like college is kind of that midpoint between, independence, but still being able to lean on an institution such as a college, and I think that's extremely beneficial for me.
Okay, good. Thank you. And then you have to go ahead and go. So we appreciate your time you could give us.
Thank you.
I'm going to interject here as moderator, take my moderator privilege. The things they're talking about are wonderful, and I'll tell you, the education that I'm getting now, having a 1-year-old, is a totally different education than I never expected. There's nothing that prepared me for being a father. I think I wasn't ready for college. When I went to college, I wasn't ready for that. But this is a whole new world, and look forward to it. Younger people, but being the parents that are out here know it changes. It changes every single thing about you. In a wonderful way, and it's scary, but in a wonderful way. So I just wanted to say that just to say, you'll get done with college, you get done with graduate degrees, and there's still a whole bunch more learning that's coming. There's still a whole lot more that you learn, and you're always learning. And so the point of that school is not the only place to get an education is absolutely true. The things a 1-year-old can teach you about yourself, really, more than anything, it's amazing. So that's my sort of newer education and experience. Let's kind of dive into the meat of things now and talk about racism. We'll come back to bullying. I think that we can sort of come back around to bullying outside of the racism conversation, but we've all, I'm sure, experienced it, and I just want to sort of get you all to tell me about your racial experiences. And let's start with you, Joshua, because you sort of alluded to I think, some learning of self kind of things, and I want to know if racism was involved in that. Coming from Alabama, what did you get? Being at Vanderbilt, what have you gotten? Because this is part of when I say it's not being talked about. This is what's not being talked about. We deal with it on a daily basis, small ways, large ways, but it doesn't make the conversation. It doesn't come out into the world, and people don't really see it. So talk about it. And I'm gonna sit down, and y'all just sort of talk now. I'm not gonna moderate this part. Y'all just talk.
Well, I think one thing that happens, unfortunately, is that we get well adjusted to injustice. Instead of trying to fight against systematic discrimination, we try to instead get our own in it. I'm not going to be concerned with the plight of others. I'm just going to see how much I can get as an individual, and these other folks can just pull themselves up by their bootstraps. I think that's a dangerous mentality to have. Yes, I have definitely experienced racism personally, but I think that before I go into a couple of those experiences, I think we have to remind ourselves that, racism does not really function on an interpersonal level the way that it used to. Racism is an institution of systematic discrimination, where someone can smile in your face but then put their name on a dotted line to get your housing project tore down so they can do some urban development. They code it. We get a lot of racially coded language these days, things like the war on drugs and criminals. They talking about minorities when they say that. At Vanderbilt, I never forget my freshman year. I had a roommate, and he was a white guy, and he told me, he said, I don't see the big deal. Racial profiling actually works. Now, this is a man. This is coming from someone. This was kind of a Phil Robertson moment, where this is coming from somebody who never had the experience with it, but feel like he can speak towards others' experiences. And as I said, I began to learn more about myself and about history and about my background, and you kind of start to see things that a lot of other people don't see unless they're critically examining their environment. And you kind of start to realize that so much of the society that we live in is racialized, but they try to cover it up with this colorblind mentality. But what colorblindness really is, and what it really means, is that I can't accept you for who you are, so I'm gonna bleach you, so that we can actually have an interaction. And that's not real acceptance. That's regulated acceptance. I have to control you in order to accept you. So, I think that racism definitely is in full force today, but not in the same ways that it was, at this time. And we have to recognize the new ways in which racism operates, if we're going to combat it effectively.
Just chime in. Whoever wants to chime in.
I want to catch up with you after this, because I want to hear how that story turned out. I really want to hear the discussion that had to ensue between you and your roommate after that statement. Oh, wow. Well, frankly, I think the worst racism comes from us. I really do feel that we work hard to eliminate each other. That sounds so awful, but how often have you been told, probably, oh, you sound like a white girl? Or how often have you been told, oh, you're not supposed to speak well?
Right.
Why? Because I'm black?
Right.
Or this is the one that always gets me. When the positive racism. You ever seen the positive racism? When people will come up to you and say, oh, you speak so eloquently.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what did you expect? I don't know what you wanted. I think, again, the worst of it comes from us. If we could understand that it's not about who's white, who's black, if we could get involved with reaching back to those of us who are less fortunate. So often we get out of the hood, or we pull ourselves up socially, as you said before, but we forget to reach back to somebody else who doesn't have the same opportunities we have. So often it's not a matter of the choices they made in life. There are young people now, 5 and 6 and 7, who have no choice in this world about what happens to them. But how nice would it be for us to go ahead and tutor them, or for us to reach out to them and say, hey, I was there once, you can do this. But we don't do that. We're so worried about cutting each other down. We also seem to forget that we're global citizens, that we're competing not only with white people or with Chinese people. We're global citizens. We've got to compete with everyone. It would be far more beneficial for us to work together than against each other. I also would like to see us come back to a point where we're running things as African American people. I don't want it to always be that we work for someone. I want to see the rise of the black entrepreneur again, to be honest. I want to see the rise of female-owned businesses again. So often, as you said, we're okay with the status quo. Right. We're okay with where things are. Oh, we figure we're not getting beat up. We've got a black president. It's cool.
Right.
When, again, I enjoyed your discussion so much. Don't think of it as us coming from chains. In Africa, we were kings and queens. When you remember that, you realize how far you have not come. And it pushes you to do better.
Yes, going back to what
Joshua
said, I did a speech this summer, and Mr. Manson is familiar with it, but the prompt was, if Dr. King were alive today, would he advocate to repeal the Florida Stand Your Ground law in terms of Trayvon Martin? I'm pretty sure we're all familiar with that case, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Trayvon Martin, he was a fearful image in George Zimmerman's eyes. We can battle this, we can debate this all day. But the bottom line is Trayvon Martin was a black young boy with a hoodie on. I'm sure it was late at night. And that image itself, it's so degrading. I feel as though black men especially, you guys are already stereotypes just from your image. And we are, it's horrible to say that in 2014 we're still here, but black men, they have such a stigma and they have such a stereotype just by being a black man that it allowed for George Zimmerman to take an innocent life based off of a stereotype, and that honestly breaks my heart. Of course, this man, he gave his life for that exact thing not to happen, and just to see it still occurring, it really does hurt me. So just going back to racism, I just feel like our people, we have came a long way. I applaud Michelle Obama, I applaud Barack Obama. They are enormous examples, and they're great idols to admire, but we have a long, long, long way to go as a people. We really truthfully do. And just being a black female, of course I went to an all-white school, predominantly white school, and I really didn't experience that much racism, honestly. To be quite honest with you, some of my best friends are my white girlfriends, just to be completely honest with you. And so, just to kind of see the difference between black females and black males, it's kind of astonishing. Because, yes, we still have that. I'm not sure. I know that my white, girlfriends, they probably think in their minds that, yeah, they're better than me. If we go for a job opportunity, I'm sure they think in their minds that they're going to get that job before I do. That's fine, you can think that. But I feel as though, we just have to empower one another. We have to love each other. We have to be comfortable I love me. I'm comfortable in my skin. And I feel as though, once you portray that and once you exude that, there's nothing else for you to do but to love me. It's just all about love and just admiring and just being there for one another. So,
There is to the point of the black male in our society and the stereotyping of the black male, it's a reality, and the best example I like to give is, I'm a judge. I put my suit on, I have my bow tie on, I put my robe on. Everybody knows who I am, But sometimes I don't have court or we don't work that day. I might go to the courthouse in some jeans and a hoodie, put my Kappa shirt on and walk around. Nobody recognizes me. Same people I was just talking to yesterday in a suit. I have a hat on and some do. It's not everybody, but there are a bunch of attorneys. They literally walk right by me. Didn't even see me, just as though I wasn't there. And it's like, how did you, I always find it humorous because I say, well, they're the ignorant people. They don't recognize people when they walk by them. So I take it to that tack. But it's a fact that my clothes seem to matter, Go ahead, you want to say something? Yeah.
Racism to me was Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
That's what inspired me to become a human relations person. I grew up in Silicon, which is about 25 miles from Goodwater. And graduated from East Harlem High School in valedictorian with the Talladega College. But Martin Luther King came out 6 times to try to get the college to participate in the marches and the nonviolent demonstrations. The college did not want us to participate in the period. Talladega College was a private school. And the president spoke against participating in it too. So the school decided we would. And he got fired. So we were with Martin Luther King to Emerson, Alabama, when they burned his Freedom Riders bus. Participated with Martin Luther King in Birmingham and got arrested. I participated with Martin Luther King in Memphis after I got out of college. But racism has not really changed, and I would like to invite each of you to come to the office and just see what went on in Nashville. It's on our walls. All pictures of the years of demonstrations here to try to get things changed. And if you know of other people, invite them to come to the office just to see some history. And on top of that, that's what the Human Relations Commission is working on. The motto is one city for all people. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get all cultures involved in what's going on in the city. That's our mission.
Yeah, I mean, and to speak to that point, that kind of speaks to what I consider now the way racism operates on a covert level, because Nashville was actually like the central hub in a lot of ways for the civil rights movement. And, you know, Martin Luther King came here kind of to get some inspiration. You had so many great figures, James Lawson, Diane Nash, Alexander Luby, I hope I'm getting his name right. But now today, like, you have to go and you have to really search to find some civil rights monuments around Nashville. And it's almost like they're trying to wash away that history. You know, you'll find an Elvis statue. He wasn't even from here. Yeah, exactly. But, you know, I would also like to get that history in a more public venues as well. Yeah.
Well, and that's what, you know, sort of what I started. You know, the conversation's not being had. It's the big secret, right, of America that we're you know. We just pretend that it was just don't worry about that. You know, we're better now, right? We're better now, even though clearly we're not. You know, what about lost my train of thought. Talk about why that is, and when I say that, why don't we keep it in the light? I mean, you know, we're doing it today, but why isn't that? You know, you think of, you know, and this is always the example everybody uses, but the Jews and the Holocaust, they talk about that every 5 seconds, right? It's a constant reminder kind of thing, because it was a horrible, horrible, horrible tragedy, and it never should have happened, and it never should happen again. But they make sure, right? And they put a lot of money into making sure. There's monuments everywhere making sure, and nobody's going to forget the Holocaust. Why don't we do the same thing about civil rights movement or slavery or any of the things that we've been through, as opposed to going and buying your Gucci bags and your Louis and your, you know, we've become materialistic as opposed to what happened.
Well, I think that it makes people extremely uncomfortable to talk about race, to talk about the fact, you know, you talk about slavery, to talk about the fact that the American Revolution would not have even been possible had it not been for the economic institution of slavery. Like, black people were the economic backbone of America, really. And honestly, like, once you get it's a difference between knowledge and understanding, because a lot of our kids know slavery existed, but didn't understand how it functioned don't understand how it functioned as an economic institution. And you talk about the Holocaust. I know a guy, well, I don't know him, but I know a guy named Brian Stevens down in Alabama. He works on the Equal Justice Initiative, and I heard him say one day that in Germany they don't have the death penalty, but someone from Germany told him that if they had one and it systematically eliminated more Jews than any other ethnic background, that it would be reprehensible, because they know and they have an understanding of the history. But here today, we have a system of mass incarceration, which includes the death penalty, which includes the disproportionate arresting convictions of black people. And because we don't have an understanding of history, we don't understand just how morally reprehensible that is. And so it would require us to condemn ourselves as a nation to talk about racism, because it wouldn't only be what we did, but what we're doing. And because we are, if we're going to be honest, because we're an imperial nation that tries to promote ourselves as the leader of the free world, and a beacon of hope, a city on the hill, all of these anecdotes of American exceptionalism, that requires a large amount of denial about your faults in order to try and promote and preserve that image. And so I think that we really just have to be really vocal and proactive about it as much as we can. Tierra talked about stand your ground, and that was an example. When things happen to other black people, that's when you will see black people like mobilize and get together and be like, this is too much. We gotta make some noise. We gotta do something. But after a while, that dies down.
Sure.
And we're very reactive as opposed to proactive, as opposed to going after the laws that are in place that would cause these kinds of things to happen, as opposed to trying to get to the root of issues on a systematic level before they result in tragedies like what happened down in Sanford, Florida. And to that point, I'll make a mini announcement. American Baptist College's Southern Christian Leadership Conference is going to be having a protest on February 25th of the Stand Your Ground law from 9 to 5 p.m. So if any of you all are able to make that, or any of you all are interested in that, you can talk to me after this. They're doing it in conjunction with Vanderbilt's NAACP. But to go back, I think that we have to be more proactive than reactive. We can't just deal with the results of racism. We have to address it at a systematic level.
And that's a great point about it's hard to talk about an ongoing problem. It's hard. You talk about the Holocaust, it's over and done, and everybody knows, and no one's going to do it again, kind of thing. But we're still in the middle of 400 or 500 years now. It's been going on of racism. It's not stopped. So that's a really good point. It's hard to have the conversation about something that's still ongoing. Ladies,
If I can jump in here.
Yeah, please.
I really feel your entire discussion could be summarized, your discussion and then your previous comments, Tierra, with a phrase from the Bible. God was telling Hosea, my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. All of what you just said went back to us not knowing. People, I can tell you, there are so many people that don't know that Tennessee is a stand your ground state. They have no idea that what happened in Florida could easily happen here in Nashville. And nobody would say a thing about it. It's incredible that people aren't coming to visit our special collections at Fisk University. Again, the first university here in Nashville, established 1866. The place is brimming over with history, but people don't use the resources. Sad to say, my students don't use the resources, and it hurts me as a president when I have students come up and tell me something that I know to be inaccurate, when all you had to do was run upstairs to special collections. It's always open to you.
Read, yeah.
It's always there for you. We have folks come from Norway and Germany to come and visit our special collections. They know, but we don't know. And it's incredible to me. I want to ask you all's opinion, because you all have different perspectives. How do you make people aware? You can tell people but you can't shove it down their throat.
I think it's
And even now, as we're having this discussion, I'm not going to make it up. I'm uncomfortable.
Yeah.
You know, it's just not something you always discuss. You don't want to say the wrong thing. You don't want to offend people, but you've got to get it out there. What are your thoughts?
I feel as though it's so funny. One of my really good friends, we had a very good discussion about some of these similar topics, and he told me that Tiara, like, you have to die in a sense. He said, like, the only way to really truthfully, like, come out, and the only way to really truthfully just, you know, be truthful with yourself is that you have to kind of die in a sense, meaning that what we're doing right now is extremely uncomfortable. I'm going to be honest, it's uncomfortable to me. But what we kind of have to do is we can't stay in that comfort zone because that's not going to get us anywhere. If we stay complacent with ourselves and our lives and the situation, if we don't speak up about these things, then nothing's going to happen. So what we have to do as a people is we have to kind of die in a sense. We have to let those insecurities and that fear kind of go, and we have to just come out. We have to, because if we never do that, then we don't know where we will be. So the first thing I think we should do is I think we should lead by example. I think that's the best thing, just to start straight up. I think your NAACP, I don't know, is it a your foundation?
It's a chapter.
Okay, I think that, is it a march? What is it?
I think it's going to be
Go ahead and talk about it,
we still in the process of like planning the particulars and the logistics, but it's going to be like a sit-in.
Okay, well, I will definitely be there if I can.
Okay.
But you know, I think we should just start by doing these type of organizations. The march that's going on Monday at TSU, of course, you know, it's tradition and it keeps happening, but we have to just keep letting our voices be heard until something really truthfully happens.
Yeah, I mean, well, I want to answer your question about how to make people aware, just really quickly. You know, in the movie Malcolm X, my favorite scene is when Elijah Muhammad has a glass of dirty water, and he puts a glass of clean water beside it, and he said, you have to let people choose for themselves. And so that speaks to her point about leading by example, and that all you can really do is provide the information and try and provide some understanding, and they have to choose it for themselves. And you can't get frustrated or impatient if they don't. I mean, like, you have to keep trying, but you can't get frustrated or impatient if they don't, because you have to remember that was a time when you didn't know what you knew. And everybody gets to different places at different periods in their lives.
That's so true. I was just thinking how clever it was of you all to stage the march now at this point in time when Black America is having such a record year. Think about where we've been the past, say, 2 to 3 years. From media to books to movements. We've had a Black president and a Black first lady. You know, like a president who accepts that he's Black, which is so important. He can be African American, but he can so easily assimilate with white society and be comfortable there. But we're seeing a president and a first lady who are Black, who are raising Black babies in the White House. They're comfortable with accepting other people. So we've got that going on. Even in the past year, as far as us having the Trayvon Martin case, you know, you had people fired up about that. You have folks that were excited about the movies we had come out. Movies like The Butler, 12 Years a Slave. Yes, that are winning awards. So really, we're at a great place in American society, even right here in Nashville, Tennessee. Tennessee State University just celebrated 100 years. This will celebrate in 2016. 150 years of existence. So this is really a great time for us to get things moving while we have some momentum. It could really be a great thing if we can just harness this energy.
And that's the key, is harnessing the energy, because what Mr. Manson just touched on is that, of course, we'll get hype about Trayvon Martin right here. Of course, we'll get hype about MLK on MLK Day. But it's just like we get hype and it's over. You know, we really truthfully need to harness this energy, because that's the only way that it can flourish.
Yeah, I mean, sustainability is key in this situation. You talk about historic times and like just reflecting on all of this history, 2014 is also the anniversary of the declaration of the war on poverty. And so we have to realize, that's the other thing. That's the other conversation that's kind of pushed to the margins a lot of times, and it really has a lot of intersectionality with racism, and so we have to really bring to the forefront those that have been kept in the dark purposely, and those who have been in the dark for so long that they don't even know they're in the dark. So you have to show them that that's where they are. Because the Harriet Tubman quote, "I freed 1,000 slaves. I could have freed 1,000 more if they knew they were slaves." A lot of people today still don't know the conditions that they're in. They're just concerned with surviving on a day-to-day basis.
Absolutely.
What if?
Yes.
If I could just make a comment that express my feelings for a moment. It's so important that you're saying what you're saying and indicating that you're uncomfortable in saying what you're saying, discussing racism. I'm a I guess middle-aged white guy, 87 years old, and I'm not uncomfortable in talking about racism, because if we don't talk about it, it will not change.
Right.
And I think that's so important. I looked at, I just wrote an editorial, which I hope will be published, but when I think about it, that I had to write that editorial on what was said by Duck Dynasty people, that blacks were better off in Louisiana prior to the civil rights movement, and I didn't hear the outcry that I would have liked to have heard.
Yeah.
Right? It brought tears to my eyes.
Yeah.
It honestly brought tears to my eyes. All right. Now this morning on the way to work, I heard that their viewership is off by 40%. Well, cool. They're still on the air. People, it's a $400 million a year business. All right. And we didn't stand up strong enough and loud enough to make the difference the way we should. And I think that we really have to do that. The bottom of my heart, don't be afraid to talk out and speak out on racism, because racism changes from year to year.
Yeah,
it does. Being black in America is difficult enough today, but being brown in America is also a challenge. Being gay is a huge problem to some. And again, I think we just have to speak out and be less afraid.
Yeah, I mean, America, for all the great things America is, it is still a white male Christian society. Everybody else is other, gay, not white, not male, other religions, whatever. You're lesser than. Even though maybe if the rest got together, we'd be more than them. It doesn't matter, right? Because we are a white male Christian country. At the bottom line, end of the day, end of the story. And I want to talk about, he brought up a point as a white middle-aged man, talk about number 9, in what ways your attitudes towards persons of other racial or ethnic groups differ from those of your parents. I want to start, my dad will be 65 this year, grew up in a single-parent home with 6 other brothers and sisters, and low income. He, of course, then went to Fisk, and 3 other siblings also went to Fisk behind him. Stayed in Nashville, started his own law firm, became his own man, like Joshua talks about. But experienced racism in an entirely different way than we do. Was in Nashville from 67 to 71 at Fisk. Was here during a lot of the civil rights events, was here to had the fro and the black power, and was alive during that era of activism, and so totally has a different attitude toward race than I do, and not a hatred or anything like that, but just I've experienced things that you haven't experienced, and so I feel a certain kind of way about. When I see something going on, it affects him in a different way than it does me, where maybe I had a white girlfriend in high school and something he would never have done, or what have you. And now, even now, that was That was 20 years ago. So you're talking about now, with you all being younger than me. How do you see it with your parents, and what's different? What are the changes, and is that a good thing? Anybody?
Well, what I'll say is, we do have to recognize that they came from a very different time.
Sure.
And I think a lot of the silence and the inactivity of the younger generation comes from the fact that when we learn about race and racism, the only thing we really learn about are like the fire hoses and the lynchings and things like that. We don't really learn about it at a systematic level. So in a lot of young people's minds, they probably feel like, well, we're not dealing with that anymore. We've made such great progress. There really must not be that much of an issue. And, that's just a grave mistake to make, because you're just letting the sore of racism fester.
Right.
And when something festers, it gets infected, and of course, infection spread. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So my mother is relatively young. She had me at a young age. So our attitudes don't so much differ as much as my grandmother's attitude. And like you said, it was just some things that just were unheard of in her day that are just commonplace now. And so, like, I think with her, like, there is a level, and I'm not even really saying that this is a negative thing, but with her, there's a level of what you might either call distrust or caution. Sure. When dealing with other racial groups, because she's been burned in the past in very significant ways, and as young people, a lot of times we don't understand just how real that era was. Yep. And so, like, we'll just dismiss it as, oh, you just harbor resentment, oh, you just holding on to the past. But unless you have that real experience, or unless you can understand that, you can't really make a judgment on their attitudes towards certain racial and ethnic groups.
Tiara, anything you want to add on?
I will definitely add to that. Agreeing with what Joshua is saying, I'm going to skip to my grandparents because, my mom and my dad are fairly young. But definitely from my grandparents' point of view, I feel like, just in their era, it was, they experienced more of the water hosing and the MLK, and they were kind of with him in that era. And I feel like that's kind of where racism is kind of started. I feel like, they're kind of stuck in that same parity, meaning that they have that kind of same mindset. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, for instance, it's really funny. We were talking about relationships and a relationship with the opposite race. And, they all just laughed. I was like, yeah, guys, I'm thinking about talking to this other guy, and he's white. He's not black. And so, my grandpa was like, absolutely not, Tiara, no, you can't do that. And I'm like, I'm sitting here like, what, why? Because that's my environment. I've been in an all-white school for all of my life. And, I understand the where he's coming from that. But I feel like we're still kind of stuck in that same mindset in 2014. Does it make it right? No. Does it make it wrong? No. It's just kind of like, where do we find that level of just, like, balance? And honestly, a lot of their mindsets, I feel like, for instance, a lot of kids I go to school with, they have that very, like, liberal mindset. They live in the Belmeads, they have maids, they have black butlers, so it's kind of like that's their reality. I can't be, I don't really feel like I can be, like, mad or upset at them, because they may come to school and have a nanny or talk about what their butler did. And in my mind, I'm like, well, dang, that could be my auntie, or that could be my this and that. But that's just their reality. That's what they live in 2014. So I think a lot of it is just, just mindsets. And I honestly believe that some people, you just kind of really can't change their attitude towards some stuff. But that doesn't necessarily mean that we can't help it and we can't move forward and progress in that.
And you know, it's interesting. I'll let you add something, but I think it's there's something to be said for the fact that you could turn on the news and see somebody get water hosed, right? You could turn on TV and there's racism, right? Mm-hmm. You're looking at it. It's on television. You see it happening. Somebody's trying to sit in and they're getting hit across the head, and there's a video of it. You can watch it and you can see it. We don't have that anymore, right? We don't. You know, it's much more. It's subtler. It's more hidden. It's more.
Camouflage.
It's harder to define. It's more camouflage. Good word. You have to look for it, right? And so then it's hard to have a conversation about it because I say, oh, that was racist, and somebody else can say, I didn't see anything. What are you talking about? Mm-hmm. That wasn't racist. You're just being whatever, right? You're just being aggressive, and you always see racism in every little thing, right? Mm-hmm. Even though probably it was, but it's not the same. It's not like somebody just sicked a dog on you and they're chewing you just because you're black. Oh, yes, that's racism, right? Clearly that's racism, but you know, I can't get into this school because they won't, you know, they have their numbers or whatever, and they won't take many more blacks. Oh, that's not racism. That's just, you know, well, your test scores weren't good enough, or, you know, they have all these, you know, well, what about the fact that the tests aren't written for me and I can't get through, you know, there's systematic things like you're talking about that you can't deal with and you can't see. It's not in your face. So go ahead, Brooke, and add what you were gonna say.
Okay. I'm going to ask your permission on this.
Yeah.
If I can, I'm going to kind of tie this in with both my parents' perspectives.
Absolutely.
I'm going to take this in another direction.
Go ahead. Direct away.
So my great-grandfather, who lived with us for some time, I'm going to start with him, had a very, 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 very ugly view of racism. When he came to visit, when he came to live with us, he was well into his 90s, and he had lived in Lynch, Kentucky. But before that, well, he lived in Lynch, Kentucky all his life. Let me start with that. But when he was 12, he saw his cousin lynched. So his view of white people specifically was very, 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 very harsh and unyielding. Mm-hmm. This is what he had seen, and it scarred him the rest of his life. Imagine having somebody a little older than you, young man, see your cousin mistreated and hurt. There's no way in the world that's fair for a child to see. Then I have grandparents and parents who, they kind of steer you to marry within your race. Right. It's not a requirement that my parents ever put on us, but they always encourage you, marry within your race to strengthen your race. But nowadays, the big thing is interracial love. You see it everywhere on commercials, in movies. That's the big thing. It's in. Mm-hmm. Those things really shaped the way they view things. Sure. Even now, my dad took my sister and I driving, and I thought this was very thoughtful of him. He took us driving his old neighborhood from the south side of Nashville. And you see these buildings that are run down. The African American, the Hispanic community lives in these places. Mm-hmm. But now all of a sudden, you're seeing them change into these fabulous housing apartments.
12th South, yeah.
The gentrification has moved in. Mm-hmm. Now, like no other time I have ever seen it before. And they're starting to move these people to the outskirts of town where it's more difficult to get to your job. They're trying to put bus lines some 30 minutes outside of Nashville because that's where they're putting people now. Mm-hmm. And I had never really given it much thought. Mm-hmm. But he said these people are renting, and because they don't own anything, folks are just turning them out. They don't ask, you don't own it. Mm-hmm. We've gotten away from even saying that this is mine, from us making these investments and saying, you can't take this from me. Right. How great would it be for us as African American people to not succumb to this gentrification, for African American people to come in and buy some of this land, to buy some of this property, so we can keep it in our community so we can strengthen our community that way.
Yeah.
Turn some of the spaces into community centers. You never know, but you have to help keep us in there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just black people, it's Hispanic people. It is Asian people. Whoever it is, get in there, get a foothold. But those were the thoughts my father shared with me, and I had never considered it before. The other thing is this affirmative action.
Mm-hmm.
During my parents' time, it really could have been seen as a good thing.
Sure.
Because these young people, there was a time that anyone intelligent who was black had to go to an HBCU. There were no other options available.
Right.
That's where your
Right.
W.E.B. Du Bois came from, where your John Hope Franklins came from.
Right.
Who are
Right.
both Fiskites, by the way.
I know. We're not going there.
This is where these scholars, where Dr. King came from. All these people had to go to HBCUs. They didn't have any other options. But then affirmative action comes up.
Mm-hmm.
And slowly but surely, our best and brightest begin to gravitate toward other places.
Mm-hmm.
There are places with better resources.
Mm-hmm.
There are places that offer them a few more opportunities, big name schools.
Mm-hmm.
So now, fewer and fewer of our best and brightest go to HBCUs.
Yep.
And you see a decline in places like Howard and Fisk, money-wise. Not necessarily in academics, but as far as money goes, you start to see a decline. So now, where affirmative action may have been a fantastic thing for them, maybe not so much for us.
Yeah.
Maybe we need something different now. I don't need a cap that says, oh, there can only be so many of you. Because now that we've been introduced to another playing field, we have assimilated and changed our game. Now we know how to compete. But now this same affirmative action that was established to let us in is the same affirmative action that often keeps us out.
Yeah. Were you done?
Yes, I'm finished. I'm sorry.
No. I just wanted to make sure before I commented on what you said, because it's definitely true what you're saying, speaking to the point about HBCUs and about people. People are now questioning whether we even need these, I think it's ridiculous, to even ask that question, because there was a time where, and I'm going to use the word integration, but in a different sense, where black people were highly integrated with one another, meaning they had a lot of connection and contact with one another. That was the result of being excluded from broader society. Now, we are included, but it's in a very tokenizing way. Very detached way. And so, but we use these tokens to try and say, oh, well, now we have equality. And, having one or two, that's not equality. That's tokenism.
Right.
I like what you said, especially about controlling things and having our own land, because I think it's important to practice group economics. And group economics does not mean that you hate other people. It just means that you're looking out for the well-being of your own communities. Jewish people practice group economics. Korean people practice group economics, and they don't have to hate anybody else to do it.
Yep.
They're just saying we're prioritizing the well-being of our community first, and in order to do that, we have to have an economic base.
Yep. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So.
We have to
Oh, yes, sir. Yes, thank you.
I'd like to say something more to everybody. I thank my dad for inviting me out. The conversation is going to be there. I'm going to sit here and not say anything. But, I just want to make this point and make sure everybody understands that the problem or the answer to the problem is you have to have somebody at the meeting after the meeting. You understand what I'm saying? There's a meeting when we all sit down, we have a seat at the table, real meeting.
is later.
It's one that happens after that meeting.
Absolutely.
Where the decisions are made. So you have to have a voice at that meeting to make a difference. If we're not at that meeting, the closed door meeting, where those decisions are made, we're always going to run behind. We're always going to be kicked out, way out south to live while these other things are happening. Then we also have to have knowledge of what's going on. Everything that's going on in Nashville is written down for the next 5 to 10 years. You have to know about the planning meetings and be at that table to see what's going on in your neighborhood. Those things are available to us, so we have to know about that and be able to take that and bring it back to the community and let them know, hey, this is what's happening. This is what's going to happen in North Nashville in the next 5 years. This is what's going to happen out south in the next 5 to 10 years. So if we're not there, then we won't know. So, thanks.
It's interesting. It's interesting the conversation went that way because I think in the past we've sort of been dealing with it. They need to do for us, right? We've been persecuted and harmed, and so now we deserve some assistance. We deserve affirmative action. We deserve 40 acres and a mule. We deserve because of what we've been through. And now the conversation is more turned into we have to do for us, right? We've been waiting so long for something to come, and it's not coming. So why don't we own our own land? Why don't we go to the meetings that we're supposed to go to and become a part of things otherwise we just sit there and let it happen, right? We don't know, if we don't go to the planning meeting, we don't know what's planned, and then we're surprised when they tear down that building that we used to go to all the time. Where happened to the community center? They've been planning to tear that down for 10 years. You didn't go to the meeting, you didn't know about it, right? What happened to, what happened to Fisk? Where happened to all the money? Y'all wasn't giving. Y'all didn't come to the thing and help us out. And so now, we got to sell some of this artwork that we probably shouldn't sell. Things like that happen because nobody's coming to be a part of things. Nobody's listening, and then it happens, and we want to be outraged because we're reactionary. Like you said, Joshua, we're reactionary. We're not trying to be proactive. Yes?
So I was just sitting here thinking, I think about Tennessee State when I went to graduate school at Tennessee State. It was totally black. But affirmative action came along. Now it's
Now it's everybody.
Everybody.
Yeah.
When I went to Talladega College, it was totally black.
Yeah.
Maybe we had one white student whose parent was a faculty member. But now Talladega College is half and half.
Yeah.
All this is affirmative action.
Right.
Of course, they're trying to get rid of it, but
If I could just add to that for a second, I was Tennessee State University board chair for 3.5 years, foundation board chair, and it's interesting to see what's happening with TSU, what's happening with Fisk, what's happening with historically black colleges.
Everywhere,
And I'm concerned. I'm concerned about the Supreme Court decision this coming spring about affirmative action in the state's powers, because I'm afraid what'll happen here in Tennessee. And I think it's really, really important that all people speak out with an understanding of what could happen. And you could talk about affirmative action as it relates to places of higher education. I'm almost more concerned about affirmative action as it relates to business. Right? Because when you have two like candidates and their only difference might be color, what does that company do? And I got to tell you, we're not that far away from that. When I moved here in 2000, I moved here for the 2000 election, by the way, with a company, and we had a major black political leader who wanted to play golf in Nashville at a particular golf course, and he couldn't until this white guy had to call and say, "What?
What are you talking about?"
Say what?
Yeah.
Where did I move to? So I think when we talk about what racism, what Martin Luther King means to us today, it's as important to me as a white guy as it is to many black folks, people of color. And I married a Latino because I went to school in South America, all right? And let me tell you, I felt it. We need to continue to work on this. So I'm so proud of you for being here.
Well, and that's a really good point, is that racism affects everybody. we talk about it on our own perspective because that's all we've got, right? But racism is nationwide, worldwide. The fact that hatred exists affects everybody, whether you're the hater or the hatee, you're still affected. And until we can get to a point where no one has these thoughts and feelings, then we're going to have to keep struggling and keep fighting and explain to those that are being racist that how it harms them. Because I think maybe that's the way to go. When we talk about the pain we feel, they don't care, right? Because they aren't feeling it. So we have to figure out to show them, well, this is how it affects you. This is how, and I noticed since Obama's been president, a lot of things I think have been coming out of the woodworks, and I thought that's an excellent thing. I think it's so great to see these people say stuff like, "Oh, I won't want to do it because it's Obama." Well, what does that mean? Because he's the president. Like, what do you mean? He's the president. Well, he's Obama, but he's the president. If he was a white guy named Obama, they wouldn't say anything, right? So the racism is now becoming clear again. It's becoming more in our face like it used to be, and I think that's a good thing because that shows people see how the government shut down because they wanted to defund something that's been passed into law and affirmed by the Supreme Court. They want to defund it. He won't come to the table. What table? There's nothing to come to the table about. It's already been passed into law and affirmed by the Supreme Court. What are we talking about?
Right.
Why? And so they want to shut the whole government down because they don't like this one law that he passed that they like to call Obamacare. It's not even called that. It's Affordable Care Act. They like to call it Obamacare.
Right.
Clearly a racial thing. There's nobody that can tell me that wasn't because he's a black guy that's the president. There's no other explanation for it. And so that that didn't just affect me. That didn't just affect these people at the table or the people in the room. That affected the entire country. The entire country shut down. The story I like is the Congress, they went on break or whatever and tried to go to the airport and realized they had shut the FAA down, so they had to go back to work and pass a bill so the FAA could open so they could fly home. You know, they realized, oh wait, we're hurting ourselves, so let's stop doing that. So this is not something that is just us anymore, and racism has started to be more affecting the entire country. It always has, even when you see that we are the economic backbone of America, that it was I guess then a positive thing for America, perhaps you might say, right? Because we were able to have our own money and get away from the crown and all those kinds of things. But now we're here. And so it's just got to be, the conversation has to be had. And I think we're now, we're moving through these questions without me even asking them, which is great. I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about bullying, talk about equality more in the schools. I think that especially for our young people that are here, how do you deal with a bully? It's interesting to me, 50 years ago, no one was talking about bullying, right? I know, we're short on time. Oh, we're done with time. Is that what you're telling me? Well, all right, we could go for another hour apparently, but I think we're done. So I won't ask that question, scratch that. I want to thank our panelists here. Horton, thank you. Brooke Davies, thank you. And Joshua Everett, thank you. And Mr. Curry, who had to leave, of course. Mr. Darby, thank you very much. And Mr. Negri, we really appreciate just the opportunity. And I think it's great that we did this today. Let's do it on February 18th and March 18th and April 18th and May 18th. And let's just, MLK Day or Black History Month next month. We like to do this kind of thing, but then November comes along and we're not talking about it anymore. So let's keep doing that. I'm going to invite Kelvin Jones up to make whatever closing remarks he'd like to make.
All right. Well, excellent program. And just to answer John's question about why Howard, where else would you go?
Wait a second.
Where else would you go?
Wait a second. Oh.
I said we were going there, but
Where else do you go?
I
understand.
But we aren't going there because this is a great
That's right. We don't.
Whoa.
This is a wonderful
Yeah,
institution.
they're all
Really on our turf.
They're all fine. They're all fine schools. I've got friends who go there.
We're down the street from this.
So
His office is down the street from
I want to
this.
thank the Human Relations Commission. The commission's been around for a long time, does a great job in bringing the community together around issues of race, religion, cultural differences. They've got excellent leadership and staff, and Tom Negri, the interim director, and Neil Darby, two great ambassadors for that organization who've spent a lot of time out in the community, continuing to fulfill the legacy of the organization. John, obviously, thank you for for hosting today and moderating. It was a very interesting discussion, and I think that everyone in TV land will get something from this experience. To our panelists, Joshua and Miles, who had to leave, and Brooke and Tiara, who is going to Howard, I'm encouraged. I really am. And Joshua mentioned it earlier. He said, when Dr. King came here back in April of 1960, he came to Nashville not to provide inspiration, but to be inspired by the work that was being done here. And so the backdrop is that Z. Alexander Luby's home was bombed because he was the attorney who helped out the students, who participated in the sit-ins. He got a lot of grief, a lot of threats, and so they bombed him. But then the community came together. Not just black folks, but there were also white folks, other folks, and it was a community of folks who came together that said, hey, this just can't continue. And we need everybody rowing in the same direction, working together to address these issues. We mentioned Alabama. I'm from Alabama too. And that's interesting. Neil's from Alabama. And I have an Alabama story too, a lot of them, but I won't share them all with you here today. But what I will say is I grew up in Dolomite, which is outside of Birmingham, Fairfield, Bessemer, Hueytown, poor, mine, sort of a steel mill community where they said, not a lot of good comes out of Dolomite, not a lot of good comes out of that area. And so I was fortunate. Dolomite. Fairfield, Bessemer, Hueytown, Dolomite. It's where the steel mills are. All right? And Dolomite is a mineral that's used in the processing of steel. Steel is very brittle, and Dolomite is what makes it strong. So you just keep that in mind, Neil, okay? All right, so that's where I'm from. All right? So, but I mentioned Alabama because on several occasions, when I left Alabama, I said, I'm not going back to Alabama. And then I ended up going back to law school, and when I finished up law school, I said, you know what? I'm not going back to Alabama. And ended up taking a bar back in Alabama, and thinking that, again, I might give Alabama another shot. And it never really worked out for Alabama, but this is an interesting story, though. So about 3 years ago, we talked about economic empowerment. I've been doing hotel development for a number of years, and so I acquired a franchise for Sleep Inn and Suites. Well, I was at a hoteliers conference, and some folks contacted me from Marion, Alabama, 30 minutes from Selma, and they said, Mr. Jones, we want you to bring a hotel to our community. It's the home of Judson College, a Marion Military Institute, and they said, the community needs. We hadn't had a hotel here in a long time. The closest one is in Selma. It's 30 minutes away. I said, that's Alabama. I'm from Alabama, and they said, why don't you just come on down? Why don't you come on down? And so I go down, and there's some folks there who are champions, who are pushing for this hotel, and then I meet with some of the folks, and this is in the Black Belt, folks who are people of color who said, this would be great. We really need it, and it would mean a lot for this community who gets so very little. So would you, give it a shot? And I really struggled with it, and finally decided to go ahead and build it, and it'll be open in April, it would have been 2 years. It's doing okay, but still today, there are people in that area. The community is probably 6% African American, 40% white. And there are some folks in that community who are white, who won't stay at that hotel, who will not invite their friends and relatives to stay at this hotel. Folks will say, that this is too good for this community. And interestingly, before I opened, there was a lady who had been called, and she said, I want to be the first one there. I want to be the first one to stay in this hotel. And there were folks who sort of camped outside, like the day before we opened up, because they just wanted, there was several of them who wanted to be the first one to stay at this hotel in this community. And it meant a lot to them in terms of pride to be able to say, hey, there's an African-American hotel in this community where the community has been at odds for so long. So, Dr. King came here because there were people who were fighting injustice. He didn't come here because Nashville had the best food or because they had the best golf courses. He came here because, as people in the struggle, sometimes, you lose a lot of battles. And he was losing battles. He was struggling in Alabama with the courts. And he says, hey, I just need to come up there and see some folks who are having some success. All right? So from that perspective, Nashville provided some inspiration for him. And so we ask ourselves today, though, would he still come back to Nashville to get inspiration? Now, see, that's a different question. I mean, again, we've got fine institutions and we've got folks attending all these institutions. But what is it about Nashville today, and I think that's our charge, what is it about Nashville today that would make Dr. King proud? So over this weekend, what we'll be doing on Monday at the convocation, the theme is passing the torch, accepting the charge. The idea being, it's time for the older generation to give up that mantle and pass it to the younger generation. It hasn't happened.
No, it has not.
And let me tell you how it's hurt us. Because that older generation has been in power for so long, and the powers that be know these folks, and they know how to compromise them. Mm-hmm. All right? And that has actually, I believe, worked, has been a disservice for us. Again, our leaders have been well-intended. They did what they could. But the powers that be have taken advantage of them and used them, and that's hurt everybody. And so hopefully we'll move forward. But again, once this torch is passed, it's incumbent upon the younger generation to do something with it. Because if you don't, then, well, you know the answer to that. So again, thank everyone for participating today. We really appreciate the Metro Human Relations Commission and the panelists. You all are all bright, have tremendous talents. Put those talents to work for good, not just for your own personal benefit, because it's easy to do, but put them to work in the communities to serve people who are from Alabama, like me and Joshua and Nia, who made it out, because we still left a lot of folks back in the fields.
Yeah, we left you.
So,
I might go to Alabama to San Diego.
Highway 5, 1605. Sleep in the suites. We've got 62 rooms.
I'm on my way there.
We'll keep the light on for you. All right. But anyway, thank you all for all you do. And again, excellent program, John.
Thank you.